Okay, looks like we are recording, so we will get going then with this panel. So first we'll just do a quick introductions for all of the audience to get a sense of who's on the panel. Everyone's bios are also on the DigiCon website, so you can check us out there if you want to learn more. But I think we can just start with everybody giving their name, talking about their kind of educational background. If you want to say something brief about your involvement with ESW that led you here, that would be great. And then just mention briefly what company or organization you are with currently. So why don't we start with Sophie?
Hi everyone, my name is Sophie Lebert. I'm currently in Rochester, New York. My educational background, I have a degree in mechanical engineering technology from Rochester Institute of Technology here in New York. And I have been involved in ESW since my time there. I was in the club for several years, became the president, and then after I graduated, I joined ESW HQ. I've been volunteering for HQ for about 4 years, and I've been the director of chapter relations for the last 2 years. Right now, I am an assistant project manager for Lebert Associates working in their hydropower group.
Great, thank you, Sophie. Mike, why don't you go next?
Sure. Sorry, just taking myself off mute. Hey everyone, I'm Mike Kazarian. I studied aerospace and mechanical engineering at University of Buffalo, graduated in 2012. I was heavily involved with ESW at UB. I was the chapter president. I was actually on the initial solar smoothie cart team, so I'm super excited to see all the carts all throughout all these different chapters throughout the all the different ESW chapters. Right now, I work at Amazon as a senior product manager within devices. And I also have an MBA from University of Rochester. So I'm in business school.
Awesome, thanks. Alex?
Sure. Hello, everyone. My name is Alexander Dale. I have a long history with ESW, but my undergrad and Ph.D. are both from the University of Pittsburgh. Undergrad in engineering physics and a certificate in nuclear engineering, and then a Ph.D. in civil and environmental engineering, which really focused on energy and water and life cycle assessment. I got involved in the Pitt chapter of ESW during undergrad, was involved with HQ throughout grad school as director of projects and education and communications, variety of different roles, stepped into the executive director position for a few years after graduating, taught some courses around social entrepreneurship and other things, spent a few years at the EPA, and now I am working up at MIT at a piece of it called Solve, which works with social entrepreneurs from around the world who are working on big important issues. So I lead all of the sustainability work there.
Great, thank you, Alex. And Derek?
Everyone, my name's Derek Chung. I graduated from UC San Diego with a degree in environmental engineering in 2012. My involvement with Engineers for a Sustainable World involves help set up the chapter down there and write a constitution. After 2012, I moved on to the national team in 2013, and we helped proliferate a few of the chapters as I was doing chapter relations as a coordinator. I've been in the energy industry for 4 or 5 years now, and I've been involved with energy storage heavily, and now I'm a senior proposal engineer for a company called Wärtsilä, which is a Finnish technology company, and yeah, so I'm leading utility scale energy storage designs for North America.
Awesome. And just a little background about myself. So Kyle Gracey, my undergrad was at Rensselaer Polytechnic Institute, where I helped to co-found the chapter there. My degrees were in economics and biochemistry and biophysics. I got involved in the chapter in the organization again when ESW became an independent nonprofit in 2013, and so served as a founding board member at that point, and then I came on to the board of directors and now serve as the chair of the board of directors for ESW. And most recently worked for a small consulting company called Scouter, where I was in charge of our sustainability division, essentially overseeing teams of researchers developing and researching sustainability technologies for Fortune 500 companies. And so I'm really excited to be here with all of you, and I think we'll get into some deeper questions now about folks' backgrounds and their path that they took. So this is really open for any of the panelists who want to jump in, but talk about what your kind of initial career goals were when you were in college, when you were in your ESW chapter maybe. What did you think at the time that you wanted to do?
I can jump in on that, sure. So initially when I was in college, I was doing this engineering physics degree and some nuclear pieces. I was in Pittsburgh, so steel was a big thing, and material science, that was a pretty obvious direction. I also kind of briefly considered the Navy's nuclear program, which seemed like a pretty interesting opportunity. And then, but over time, I got more and more interested in kind of the sustainability side of energy, and being part of ESW led me down a whole rabbit hole of different topics and areas where I wanted to focus more on renewables and more on how do we make a lot of things better. So that shifted, and I ended up going to grad school rather than pursuing an immediate job out of college. A decision which I would debate for anyone that is quite debating it.
I'll hop in on this one. When I was in college, I don't know, really, really happy to help start up Engineers for a Sustainable World. Kind of brought this entrepreneurial side out of me. So I always thought I was going to start some kind of business inside of like clean tech or energy industry. I had a lot of experience in my past in construction as well. And so I just merging all these ideas is kind of a lot. So I really got involved. I was really hoping to get involved in the energy industry as well, because I really felt like I could make major changes in impacting reducing CO2 emissions. And so I just kind of, whatever door was open at the time, I just kind of kept keeping an eye out on industries. And you might have seen in Mike's bio that we co-founded a clean tech company called Canary Drones together, which actually, like, the skills that were developed in that helped me get the job I have now, in a sense. So I don't really, it's a real windy path. I don't really think like my college experience or like my views then, like, I could have imagined myself like doing what I did to get where I am, but I imagined myself in something similar to where I am now.
Going into college, I was pretty set on going into something sustainable. I was pretty interested in renewable energy when I was in high school, and I had taken engineering classes, and I knew that I really liked that technical aspect. So going into college, I was really set on doing something technical within sustainability. And I pursued Engineers for a Sustainable World throughout college and worked on a lot of different sustainability projects. But didn't get directly into the sustainability industry after college. I ended up going into space and defense because that's where a lot of the jobs were, and then kind of ended up back in sustainable energy.
Yeah, and kind of piggybacking off what Sophie and Derek were saying, so me studying as a mechanical engineer, loved building things, and I knew that that's what I wanted to do at the end of the day. My first job out of college was also in the defense industry. It was the first job that I actually received and had to take it. Something that I've found throughout my career is the things that I enjoyed during my ESW days were working with people and also the leadership positions that I had. So I think that had a big influence on where I wanted to go and take my career. None of the jobs that I've had have been specifically tied to sustainability, but I've always taken like sustainability as kind of like a design parameter as I'm approaching things. I was also at Autodesk previously, and I was able to loop sustainability in as a design component for a lot of our workshops. And even today at Amazon, I'm working pretty much every day with the sustainability team within devices to try to push forward sustainability for devices within Amazon. So that's been a huge, like Derek said, it's a windy path, but just using the principles with sustainability to keep pushing it forward, even if it's not directly your role. I think it's important to bring that with you.
And piggybacking off on that question of kind of the windy path, where would you all say that you are today? Are you sort of in your dream job? Are you still thinking about, another step? Where you are today fit into where you'd like to be in the future, or does anybody feel like they are already in their kind of quote unquote dream job, if you have?
I'm still on a windy path. I kind of hit a dream job for me, like the dream industry. Energy storage is really, really fascinating industry. It kind of maxes out my engineering capabilities, and I'm learning all the time. It's quite fascinating, the applications of the technology, but it's like when, I don't know, for me, it's like when I got there, it's like I'm still like asked this question of how can I have more impact, and it's always this question is like burning in my head. So now I'm a lot more discerning when I choose the activities I do in my off time. But I think, an interesting maybe, next step after, I've reached this point was to see what's happening in the carbon markets. And like, there's a lot of opportunities in the carbon markets coming up. And there's a lot of interesting startups to address CO2 emissions right now. So I think where energy storage was in like 2010, 11, where it's just like people are starting to talk about it, they think it's something big, like all the kind of futurists are happening. Like there's the seedlings of that in the carbon markets, and so I'm keeping an eye on that. I'm involved with it in my spare time.
Yeah, so I would definitely say that, like Derek, I'm still also on the windy path. I don't currently see myself in like quote unquote dream job. I definitely love what I do, and the lens that I have is I'm learning a ton, similar to Derek, and I'm constantly being pushed and learning principles on how to launch and build things. I think for me, I still hold on to that entrepreneurship fire, and so I'd love to start my own clean technology company. The two things that are very interesting to me right now is vertical farming or indoor farming, as well as carbon capture. So TBD on that. So pursuing, just reading as much as I can and just trying to network into those industries.
For me, I'm definitely in a stepping stone career. As an assistant project manager, I get to work with a lot of full-time project managers who have gone through their courses and are certified in that field. So for now, I'm just kind of working with them, shadowing, learning, assisting on projects, and that will get me to a point where I can also get my certification. But at that point, I think working as a project manager in the industry, in the renewable energy industry, is what I see myself doing for a long time and what I really want to do. So I think I'm on the right road to my dream job. And for now, this is definitely my dream job.
I am probably the closest to a dream job. It is, and the reasons for that are a little bit, maybe not saying that I have never been a person who has a clear idea of this is the thing I want to be doing. But for me, Solve is a great blend of being able to design experiences and programs, not so much products, but working with people, really interesting people from around the world, working on really important problems all the time, and I get to help pick what problems those are, and getting to do a little bit of policy work and technical work all blended together. So this is a really nice balance of things for me. Are there things that I could see that maybe I'd want to do in 2 or 3 years? Probably a step or two towards policy, a step or two towards something that's a little bit more directly impacting the ground as opposed to supporting people who are on the ground. But for right now, Solve has a phenomenal team, and so it's just really great to work with them. And I don't see any particular reason to change. So that's probably as close as I've managed to find to a dream job in terms of balance. And so it's a weird and unique opportunity in that sense too.
Thanks, Alex. And I think we'll stay on you for just a sec. We had a question from the audience. Someone was curious, what was it about the Navy's nuclear engineering program that you did find appealing, even if you decided not to go in that direction?
Yeah, I mean, it was a long time ago for sure. But at that point, it had a pretty clear opportunity, right? There was going to be less negotiations about these things, or what exactly are you going to be doing? Are you going to be a grunt for a long time? It was clear we're going to train you, and you're going to run really impressive tech in a really intense setting. You're going to learn a lot of different stuff, and you're going to get to see the inside of a large metal can, but also maybe some different parts of the world. And that was at a pretty good salary. So all of those things were pretty good, particularly back in 2008, 2009. I'm curious to see some of the decisions that are showing up now, but I'm also certainly graduated in the middle of a recession. So.
And so turning back to the whole group then, for those folks in our audience who are thinking about, their sustainability career, or at least interested in a sustainability career, what advice would you give to folks who are graduating soon who are looking for a job in sustainability?
Yeah, I think I can take that. So coming from my perspective, like I've never had like that specific job directly related to sustainability. It's something that I've always tried to break into. And if you're not finding that traction, directly with your career, I would definitely recommend staying involved with ESW or finding other, local to the city that you eventually move to, like organizations to volunteer with, be it, like the local like farming organizations, like in Boston, like there's the Victory Gardens, or even just other entrepreneurship organizations like the Clean Tech Open. Those are organizations that I kind of used out externally to scratch that itch. So I would just keep an open mind and just make sure you're constantly putting yourself into situations where you're meeting folks that are passionate like you are, to keep that fire alive.
I think something that hindered me a lot on my job search was getting hung up on keywords. I kept typing in engineering, sustainability, renewable energy, and I just wasn't seeing the jobs that I wanted. And it took a long time for me to kind of figure out how to look for the right jobs. So what I ended up doing was working backwards, and instead starting to look around my area for companies that were involved in big renewable energy infrastructure projects, which is how I found the consulting firm that I'm now working for. And then I was able to go to their website, look at their job descriptions, and from there really understand what kind of work I was interested in and how that fit into the actual titles of the jobs that were on the market.
Great advice.
Yeah, I think that's exactly it. It's most of the jobs that have sustainability in the title are not necessarily the things you want right away. They're like sustainability director is not necessarily the thing that particularly technical folks may want to do. It's much more, well, as technical folks, we have a kind of a unique space where we can help build all of the things that people talk about needing to be built, renewables and green buildings and better city planning and everything else. There's a role for all of those different skills, and none of those jobs necessarily have sustainability in the title, but they're implementing that sustainable world. So yeah, figuring out where your skills apply and then working for the companies that are doing it. And if you want to go down that path of helping to steer large companies towards sustainability, recognize that that's a career path, but it's also a different set of training. It's more on the training towards somewhat of the MBA, but it's an operational and programmatic piece as opposed to the technical side in a lot of cases.
Derek, anything you want to add here?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm gonna take a little bit more of a darker route on like what happened with me and stuff and what I've seen in the industry. So I had a job, or my degree is in environmental engineering, and at UCSD, it's under the mechanical and aerospace engineering department. But for everyone else, like they think of it as like hydro civil kind of a title. So like I got stuck on the keyword of like environmental engineering when I like got my degree, and I had no idea what the implications were when I got out as well. So if what I decided I learned later out of all this was like, it's not really about like the titles or anything. It's really like catch a wave on an industry, like get into the industry. And so it's two things like that I think were really helpful in my personal path, which was like, I think you got to hustle right now. Like just work, just find work. Don't care. Like I had an ego about like what I was going to do for a bit. And like, it's hard for me to find work. I spent 9 months like looking for work when I got out of school, like I was heavily involved in Engineers for a Sustainable World, and it just took me a while because I think my criteria was too small, my ego was too big, and then I just was like, I was in construction, and then I was building robots on the side, and those two things actually got me my first job as a project engineer. I was turning wrenches on on energy storage systems out in the field. Like I was like hands-on on the system. So like those things broke me into it because like I was like literally like demoing like slummy apartments, you know, like just to work. Like, and so I think out of it, like, you know, when people looked at my resume, like people saw my cover letter, they saw the hustle that was involved, and I really recommend that. My other friend, she's crushing it as like director of supply chain now, and she started 3 years ago as an office manager. So like she was just in the industry, like she just did her time, and like, you know, there's so much movement in these industries, people going places, like you find a moving thing, it's like there's always openings. So if you just keep struggling, you're going to float to where you're supposed to be. So I guess the big thing right now is don't get hung up on what you're doing. Just like get in there, learn some skills, because anything you're doing right now is going to help for business like long term. So good luck. Yeah.
Great advice. Thank you. Also, look widely at your titles. Don't get stuck too narrowly. Don't let your ego get in the way, and be willing to work hard. And maybe your first position may not be exactly the sustainability job that you were expecting, but that doesn't mean you can't work your way there over time. And Mike, we had a specific question from the audience. So folks were curious about what about vertical farming interests you, and also in your opinion, what are the business challenges and opportunities associated with that emerging industry?
Yeah, so I think that what interests me is just the ability to like grow food hyper locally, and also just kind of, you know, vertical farming is interesting to me, at least, because it solves, or could potentially solves, you know, massive transportation issues. Like, why are we getting asparagus from South America when we can grow it potentially, you know, in your neighborhood? So that to me is interesting, and kind of diving deeper into that. On the supply chain side, I think the business challenges, I'm not super familiar with them. I did a small entrepreneurship project about like a year and a half ago in grad school, and we were just focusing on the biggest problem was, you know, at least that we were looking to address, was fencing within vertical farms and just making sure it's a uniform growing area. It's interesting because with vertical farming, it's more of like a literal factory where you're it's much more, it can be much more mechanized. So the pros and cons that go with that. But for me, I think I also am very much like a science fiction fan. So just thinking that of growing our food and like on Mars eventually. So that's kind of like how I see this fitting into at least my mental model of that. I also just think it's really cool. Yeah.
Awesome. And then staying on that kind of topic of entrepreneurship, some of you have mentioned being involved in entrepreneurial activities. If anyone want to talk about, you know, sustainability, sustainable entrepreneurship, and especially, you know, what the opportunities are there in terms of careers or jobs, and also what you would, for those of you who have been involved or wanted to be involved but couldn't, what you would like to see in the kind of sustainable entrepreneurship ecosystem.
Well, that's a big question.
Take it however you like.
No, I find it interesting because I've taught some courses around sustainable entrepreneurship, and I now support a lot of people, and I lead challenges trying to find sustainability entrepreneurs. And so it's interesting to follow that there's so much happening, and there's certainly trends. Clean tech was much bigger a few years ago. It's come down a little bit. There's now a real push towards ag tech and related pieces there. There's a lot of people looking at carbon. And there's a certain amount of funding out there to do it, which is nice. I think it's interesting I'll use the term theory of change, which has a lot of its own space, that, you know, how do we make an impact on big problems? Solve also works on things like learning and education, or kind of broader prosperity. And it's interesting to see the solutions we get in those, where for sustainability, a nonprofit really probably won't scale in a lot of cases. And so you're looking at something that has to have a revenue model, that has to have something that can look at scale in some fashion, which is different as an approach. I think there's a need for more people to look at it. I think the major risk that I see is entrepreneurship is a wildly insufficient solution to almost every sustainability problem. And so we treat entrepreneurship as the solution at our peril, because it can tend to lead us to omit or minimize the importance of policy, both for scaling up entrepreneurship, but also for tackling these larger problems, because so many of them are driven by large established actors who are interested in entrepreneurship as a way of shedding risk for their own research and development. I can talk more about that if people are interested, but we need specific tech innovations around specific things, but for a lot of the different aspects, we have small scale solutions, and we need policy to make them cost effective as they're scaling up so they can get to cost parity, or make sure that they're not just losing out wildly or being impossible under current code.
Mike and Derek, you were both involved in sustainable entrepreneurship in some way. Talk to us about your experience in navigating this piece of the sustainability through world.
Yeah, so I can kind of speak to the Canary drones aspect. So I think one of the biggest learnings that I took is that being an engineer and being a builder, it's very much, you have the mentality, field of dreams. If you build it, they will come. And so I kind of just ignored the whole business side of things, and not ignored the whole business side of things, but I just wish that we were more laser focused on product market fit and making sure we had customers and found a lightweight way to just get revenue right away and scale up right away, as opposed to, devoting all this energy into something that customers might not actually want. So if I was to go back, I would, really focus on nailing down the customer pain point and customer problem, and then addressing that. But yeah, even though it wasn't a successful company, I took it as a very successful experience for myself, because I learned so much, and it also inspired me to kind of round out my skill set and get my MBA, to learn from a holistic how to launch and build products and companies. So that's, tactically how I would approach it, is just making sure that you had that product market fit. Yeah. And Derek, I don't know if you want to add anything to that from your side.
Gosh, I learned something else from that. I actually, Mike emailed me, I don't know, a year ago, and it was some company, the exact same idea, the product was there. They got seed funded $25 million, and so for me, it wasn't there's a market fit in this product. I know researchers at UC Berkeley that are doing this exact thing, researching, essentially using AI and computer vision to find diseases in plants, our exact vision, what was it, 4 years ago now, Mike? And so there is a desire, there was a market need. I think there's a couple things. One is being too early is a problem. And that's really if people can't understand, I remember I was pitching around, we got to finals 6 times, and I was in front of all these investors, and they were like, oh, hey, yeah, this is a great idea. This is a really great idea. But we want to see more data. I was like, well, I need 75 grand to see more data. And they're like, well, we can't do that. We're so it's a little chicken or the egg kind of situation for me. The thing I would learn out of that is just really asking the good question of why am I doing this? For me, I had to see it myself about my internal fortitude, to withstand all the ups and downs. When they talk about ups and downs, it's they're serious. You gotta be a little bit crazy to keep going when everyone says no, and all your friends are doing great in their jobs, and you're well, I'm just pissing away money right now as I was a 24-year-old or whatever it was. And just, so there's a lot of other questions I think that are nuanced, not only in business, what a business needs, and when they'll invest and what you need to show them, but also internally, am I set up mentally and emotionally to handle all this? Do I have even a buffer? It's when at the time I had saved up a nice stack in my piggy bank, but nice stack in the piggy bank goes by really fast. So funding, capitalization, risk capitalization, I think is really important too. So out of all this, I still got this itch for it. I still have this huge desire to start something and recreate those feelings of I don't know, leading something. I think I developed these through Engineers for a Sustainable World, and they don't die. It's because I know I can. I know it's there. So what I see now is back to Alex's point of follow policy. It's like not like I really believe that. I really believe that policy drives like opportunities and stuff, because like when there's changes in the market, there's like opportunity, and like little fingers like chaos is the ladder and stuff. Like it's kind of true. Like there's a lot of chaos right now, and there's like a lot of opportunity out there. So I don't know, a lot of questions, a lot of rambling on this, but there's like a lot. It's like entrepreneurship is beautiful in theory and like hard in practice, but like definitely pays off for whoever can like go through all the hurdles of it.
Yeah, thank you. So mental fortitude, timing the market right, thinking about your audience and the business case, and also recognizing that there is this big lever called policy, and that entrepreneurship may be the right tool in some cases, and there may be other tools or other players who are the right people to move to get what you want. Great, awesome. And it looks like we have another question from the audience. Folks want to know how you found ways to implement sustainable development or sustainability in your current jobs, even if you don't characterize it as a sustainability job, quote unquote, at the moment. So anybody who wants to take this, what have you done in your current position to find ways to implement this? I think I heard a few of you talking about this in some ways. So like Mike, I think I heard you saying a little bit about sustainability of devices. You want to say a little bit more about that?
Yeah, for sure. So, as I mentioned, like I'm a senior product manager for Amazon devices, and my whole job is to come up with the go-to-market strategy for hardware products. So from my perspective, like I will recommend to strongly not launch a product if it's missing certain sets of features, or didn't go through a certain manufacturing process. So just having that as just my sustainability tenets of what I, have as the minimum bar, and, holding the product teams to the product and engineering teams to that standard. And then also making the business case for it. So, looking at a lot of market research that says why sustainability is important to whoever the end customer is, or why sustainability is important to the bottom line, and how this is actually going to be better overall. It definitely helps at Amazon. I mean, Jeff just donated or started the climate pledge, signed the climate pledge. So there's definitely a lot of pressure from up top, which is good. And it's definitely interesting how much you can impact at a larger company. It's definitely not where I initially saw myself, working for a large corporation, but then at least in my current role, I can see the impact that I can potentially have when, there's millions of echoes everywhere in the world. So I think that's like, in summary, it's really just, crafting those internal sustainability tenets for myself, and then finding the research and the data points to support those points on why it makes the business case for the company as well as the customers.
Anything else? How have you found ways to implement sustainability into your current job, even if it is part of your, the mission of your organization?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's the piece for me. Yeah, is that for Solve, sustainable development is largely baked into it's one of our 4 core areas. So our focus when we were set up was go find people who are doing good work on sustainability challenges and help them do more of it by connecting to people at MIT and companies and others around the world. So I think what's fun is I get to look at all the different aspects of sustainable development and help pick out specific areas where technology and entrepreneurship can play a really catalytic role, put those out to the world, and work with a lot of people to shape them to make sure we're asking the right questions. So in that sense, I feel really privileged that I am able to work in that space. And hopefully that means that we're steering the conversation and steering what sort of enterprises we're spotlighting towards things that are focusing on problems where technology is useful, but also focusing on solutions that are coming from the communities that they're affecting. And I think that's the other piece for sustainable development, is doing it in the right way, where that doesn't necessarily mean picking a bunch of US teams that are doing interesting things in Niger and Bangladesh and Botswana, but instead it's being able to pick teams that are from Benin or Nigeria or various parts of India that are solving food systems challenges, that are solving circular economy challenges, that are looking at coastal resilience, and being able to raise those up as coming from a lot of different contexts. They can spend to a lot more. So we've been able to really think about how do we do sustainable development? And as a result, how do we push millions of dollars of philanthropic and investment dollars and companies who are interested in working with entrepreneurs, but often don't know quite how, towards working with good ones in a good way. So I feel very lucky that we're able to do that. And I feel like we've done an okay job. Certainly there's a lot of critique and a lot of spaces where we can do better always, but we've had some conversations with multilaterals that are kind of the classical sustainable development organizations too, and thinking about how do we bring some of this methodology into their work as well.
Derek or Sophie, what has implementing sustainability in your work looked like?
Yeah, so the company I work for is a consulting firm. So I act as a project management consultant for the local energy company. I work very closely with their team of engineers who are working on hydropower projects. So part of what we have to help them do is present their business with a convincing model for why they should be investing their company dollars into renewable energy. As a very big energy company, they're obviously working in gas and hydro and many other sectors, and they can only allocate so much money to each of those projects. So helping them understand that putting their money into these hydropower projects isn't just going to help them from a monetary return standpoint, but it's also going to provide these social impacts. They'll be able to take advantage of these different government programs that will provide them funding and grants. So a lot of it is about helping them understand the social impact as a cost-benefit analysis for why they should invest in these kind of projects.
Derek, anything you wanted to share on this one?
Yeah, I guess on a personal level, energy storage is like generally helps the sustainability because it enables, like, so many of my projects are tied with solar plus storage, wind plus storage. It's quite, hydro plus storage. It's kind of cool. But what's interesting about Wärtsilä is actually, when I say it's a Finnish technology company, like it started by building ships, like sailboats and stuff. And over the past 200 years, it's evolved, and part of like building ships, like got rid of sails, they put in engines, and you're like, okay, now engines are on there, like burning up diesel. And so they're actually like one of the largest producers of engines, like big engines on cruise lines. And you're like, oh, what, you're working for a cruise line engine company? It's like, yeah. But their vision is like to go 100% renewable energy by, they don't actually say when. So this is like one of the catches on them. But anyways, long story short, energy storage plus engines is actually really good for reducing diesel consumption. And so there's like a really fast rate of return ROI on engines plus storage. And that's actually a big thing. So like past engines being on cruise lines, they actually started putting them on islands to power entire islands, Hawaii, St. John, like a bunch of islands in the Caribbean. And so it's like, I can't, like for myself, it's cool, but like, I guess in a larger context of like, there are ways to not look at, I remember in college, I'd be like, oh, no, I'm never working for like an engine company. Like, hell no, now I am. And there's like ways to actually really reduce the impact of these companies by joining them. There actually is good intention. I think, there's like business cases, strong business cases where you can like make all your millions of dollars back in 2 to 3 years by like combining technologies. So I guess in a way it's like keep an open mind of like how we can start, weaning ourselves off of fossil fuels.
Thank you. And we have another question from the audience. So folks are asking about that personal fortitude that was brought up earlier. And so this is again for all of the panelists. So talk about how any advice that you would give for folks who are struggling with that, personal fortitude, willpower, motivation piece of the problem, not just in the context of entrepreneurship, like we talked about it, although that's certainly one place you can talk about it, but just, when you hit roadblocks in these moments and where you have to really push through, especially if you're not in the position that you want to be, have any of you encountered that? And for those of you who have, talk about what your strategies were, what advice you would give to people who are struggling with that personal fortitude challenge.
So about 4 months before I graduated from college, I accepted a job as a quality engineer in the space and defense industry, which was definitely not my dream job and not something I was very excited about. But as someone leaving college, I knew my student loans were about to kick in and I was worried about getting a job, and it paid well and it had really good benefits. And at that moment, that's what I felt like I needed to focus on, which I think is the case for a lot of people graduating. You want to like make sure you establish yourself in your career and you're in a stable position. But I was definitely upset. I wanted to pursue sustainability. This wasn't my passion. So volunteering was really the thing that kept me going. And not just because I was able to spend a lot of my time doing something that was helping the world and helping other people who wanted to pursue sustainability, but because I was surrounded by this support system of people, a lot of whom were in the same situation. They were not in the sustainability industry and also kind of bummed about it. So we could share and have some solidarity and then help each other grow and help each other look for sustainability opportunities. So that's why I joined HQ. And that's why I continue to be involved. It's really a nice support system to help you through those times when you don't have that personal fortitude.
I'm gonna, you know, second what Sophie said on that one.
Yeah.
I really, I personally struggle with that a lot, especially it's like as I plateau into like things that I achieved like way younger than I thought I was going to, and like, I don't know, it's like, I'm so used to like having some sort of program, like high school, and then you go to college and you have a 4-year plan, and you get from college and you like go get established. Now that I'm established, I'm like, all right, like there's got to be something greater still. Like I'm still chasing that feeling that like was so great from Engineers to a Sustainable World. And so I really do believe in the key thing I think out of what Sophie was saying is like being involved in something greater than yourself is like really important to like lose like a sense of like, I don't know, back to this ego concept, but like get in, it's like it gets so stuck in my head a lot. And like, I think it's really, really important to be involved in the community somehow. And so I'm testing to what that is, and how much my involvement is. But I think that's a really, really good piece of advice that Sophie was giving.
Yeah, I would.
Yeah, go for it.
I would definitely +3 that. Very similar. Like after graduated from UB, I actually moved to Boston without a job. I sold my car and had enough money for 3 months of rent. And so I just, it was very humbling, like, graduating with 2 engineering degrees, and I was moving boxes in like a legal firm and just like being a typist for companies. So that was like probably one of the hardest periods in my life. Just like I was afraid to go outside because I thought I'd spend money, and like I didn't have that, and I needed a full-time job, which is why I had to take the, defense job that first came my way. But something that kept me going through that whole thing was, staying involved with the community and volunteering, specifically with Engineers for a Sustainable World. That's also when I joined ESW National. Like within those first years when I was at Raytheon, it wasn't my ideal job, but I knew that eventually I would get to where I wanted to be, or at least stay involved. And like Derek said, I 100% agree. Like find that group that, makes you feel like you're part of the bigger, it keeps your like long vision that you can work towards. I think another thing too, is don't be super hard on yourself. It's like, it's going to be a long process. We're all on this journey, and you're not going to get it right away. And like, if you think of it as like as milestones, you're probably not going to be happy with it. So kind of just like look at and embrace the journey that it's, this is the process that we're all in. It's like, it's not that, if I get this sweet mechanical engineering job at X firm, like everything's going to be solved. Like in 3 years, like you're probably going to want something else after that. So definitely, just embrace that, embrace that it's, going to be a little bit of struggle. You're going to have ups and downs, and find that community that you can plug into and stay connected with.
Alex, anything you want to add here, or any advice you would give to folks who are struggling with that personal fortitude problem?
I think others have said I'd +4 to those. Yeah, find networks. Know that you are not the first person to struggle with almost any challenge, and there are lots of different ways to connect, regardless of what works for you, whether that's more text-based, more video-based, eventually, hopefully, in-person-based. But we'll get through it. There's a lot of different things. Everyone struggles. And yeah, to Sophie's initial comment, I just re-up that at first, yeah, it's okay to just get a job, because skill, also coming back to some of the other questions, skills and experience matter much more than specific content for initial jobs.
Great, thank you. And so we have another audience question. And since we're starting to run low on time, I think we'll just probably take like 2 answers on this one, whoever wants to jump in. What are different ways, going back to the kind of sustainability in your workplace, what are different ways that we can make sustainability practices cost effective within our campuses and or companies? Anyone have experience with that they want to share?
You said within our campuses and where else is it?
Campuses or companies.
Student organizing for campuses, student organizing has done so much for so many places. Like many of you, you know, if you're at chapters, make sure your ESW chapter is working with others on campus who are pushing the university for divestment, for better clean energy purchasing, for better building standards, for all of these things, for better food in the dining halls and where that comes from. That moved so many different needles at Pitt. And I've, you know, following it for 15 years now, so many things that have happened and are now totally institutionalized happened because students yelled at the administration continuously for years on end and just always said, that's great, now let's do more. And that turns into, unless you have a very, very good university administration, often one that has a lot of money. I'm fortunate that MIT, their sustainability department does great things and they don't talk about them at all. The only thing they won't do is divestment. That's a whole other conversation, but find ways. Student organizing is really, really effective in those spaces. I'm curious to see how that's translating into the corporate world, because I think we now have a lot of young employees in companies that came from that college experience and are now pushing companies like Amazon to do more and pushing companies like Google to do more. I think the missing gap is that so many companies that are so important don't have the public visibility of Google and Amazon, so they don't have that additional repercussions from the public and their purchasers. I think that's going to be particularly true for technical folks. It makes it harder, doesn't make it impossible.
Yeah, I actually think it's, oh, sorry,
yeah,
Kyle.
No, go ahead.
Just building up what Alex says, I think it, at least what I found at Amazon is that it's kind of very similar to my ESW days, where you're finding groups that are doing something that's tangentially related to you. And then if you can kind of connect all these dots, be like, hey, like this is something bigger, like all these different, like, you know, the mechanical engineering team's doing this, or industrial designers are doing this, or even the finance team is focused on, you know, X and Y, and it's all sustainability related or has that lens, and just tying all those threads together. Because like not all these, you know, not everyone's thinking like broadly about sustainability, but if you can be that champion to say, hey, like this is something we should talk about, and I'm gonna, you know, bring this up in meetings, like that's something that I've tried to not be afraid to, like when I'm in a review or in a presentation, to make sure I talk about like what's important to me, and also just like going back to, you know, finding those data points, and the data points in terms of like bringing the broader group on could be, you know, just pointing to our peers in the device space, like, you know, what Google does for their devices or what Microsoft does for their devices, and like and all of that. So yeah, I think it's very similar, where you're just trying to connect all those dots, but also making sure that you have data points for why it's important, because that's what leadership, at least at Amazon, will ask for, is, you know, what data do you have to back this claim up?
Cite evidence to defend your assertions. The number one thing we tell everyone on their applications, and most people get it wrong. Doesn't have to be quantitative evidence in all cases, but cite evidence to back up your assertions.
Thank you, guys. So, just a little bit more here as we start to get closer to our end. But for folks in the audience, keep sending in your questions. We will take as many of them as we can. Just curious now for all of you on the panel, if you want to share anything about what you're thinking about or looking at or excited about in terms of future steps in your career. So you heard a little bit of this earlier in terms of Alex, you were talking about potentially interest in policy. But if anyone wants to share, not necessarily, that you're going somewhere different, but what's on your horizon, your radar? What are you thinking about or excited about in your own next steps? Since none of us have said that we're, at our absolute dream job.
I'll pop in.
Yeah.
Just, I don't know. At this point, I just want to climb that ladder. Keeping tabs on just doing work and doing it excellently. I think I'm just getting to this age where I'm like not as concerned with what's going on outside, but so much as like, how do I be like have all these skills and just keep working at them in a more vertical manner and just like keep influencing and keep like I guess pushing for opportunities and like keeping an eye open for these things. So it's more I'm in a point of refinement in my career. I think it's hard for me to let go of like entrepreneurial things or like like do I want to do this like crazy thing on the side. So I still get ideas, I write them down, but I really weigh them against like what I'm doing currently, and so almost parallel paths like that I'm trying to
Thank you, that makes sense. And we got another question from the audience. If anyone has any insights into what the job market is looking like for people coming out of school right now with the current situation, the lockdowns, school being canceled or moved online. Any insights for folks who are trying to, or suggestions for folks who are trying to navigate this very unique moment that we have in our economy and society right now?
I have a little bit because we work with a bunch of companies, some of which would hire technical folks. It seems like there will be opportunities for people to do technical work. We're going to need some now and a lot more in the future, because there's likely to be a bunch of different stimulus pieces. There's good opportunities there. It seems like that while the stuff has gotten laid off and because no one can send anything anywhere or see people in person, those pieces will come back, and it seems like those of us that have jobs that can work and degrees that can work in remote jobs have been significantly less affected. We have a different set of stresses at home, right? I am 2 working parents trying to also have a 9-month-old who needs constant attention. That's our current situation. But I think there will be jobs. They may be a little bit slower, but I think they'll be there. We then have the requirement, I think, that we are very considerate for the rest of society, where those jobs may not come back quite as fast. There's a real risk of kind of a further cataclysmic shift. And so making sure that, coming back to that policy piece, that we're part of the voices that are pushing for equitable stimulus and equitable investment that can also provide us jobs, but will also make the world more resilient for everybody.
Okay. Anyone else advice for folks emerging into the job market in this moment?
Yeah, I really recommend upping your LinkedIn skills. Like really just, I can't tell you how many times people like reach out to me for advice on LinkedIn. Just like, like, what do I do? Like, how do I do this? And I'll just like spend time with them on the phone. So like whatever industry you're looking for, like just really reach out to people that have those careers, like set aside some time. This one dude, I don't know who he was. He just like found me out of nowhere, and I just like set aside time for him. I like chatted with him, and 2 months later he got a job using keywords, I told him to look for and stuff. So if you're wondering what keywords to look for, I told this guy who's trying to switch from IT over into the renewable energy industry. I was like, yo, like, just show the initiative. Like, if you have time to spend, people are gonna ask, like, what'd you do during this downtime? And it's like, how do you separate yourself from like everyone else? And it's like, yo, I was working on my NABCEP, PV design installation certification. I was working on my PMP, like I was working on just like I read these books, like I worked for this company, like I made stuff for hospitals. Like, I don't know, whatever it is you want to do, like just keep finding your way to like do a little bit above the norm, and like you're going to be first in line. So that's all I can say is like, I don't know when the jobs are coming back. I do know, like, just whatever industry you're going to do, like find key people, ask what skill sets they look for. And like on LinkedIn, I swear, like people are just looking for keywords. They hardly even like it's just browser optimization. So EITs, PMPs, NABCEPs, like just find your thing.
I just want to build on that just a tiny bit. Never underestimate the power of LinkedIn. For a long time, I just didn't really update my profile. I didn't care about it. And then when I was really, really anxious to find a new job, I finally like got LinkedIn Pro and I like updated everything. And I started trying to reach out to key people in the industries I was interested in. And I was able to find the recruiter for my current company on there. And we were able to connect and we had a couple conversations and we got to know each other. And she kind of saw that I was really dedicated to this field and really, really wanted to get started in it. And she was able to connect me with my current boss, who she saw a lot of similarities between. And that's the whole reason I got this job, because I reached out to her specifically. It wasn't because I submitted an application online. So you can submit hundreds of applications, but getting that one-on-one connection with another human being can be the best way to propel you into a new position. So I would definitely take the time to look for recruiters and talk to them and make those connections.
I'm gonna second this one. Mike helped me actually get my job as a project engineer in my the first energy storage company I worked for. It was just like I pretty much like spent a ton of energy, 14 hours on like one job application, and I only applied to one job and I got it because like at the end of the day, the recruiting manager, I was like, what separated me? He's like, you're just showing initiative. He's like, you're the only person that wrote a cover letter. I was like, I had hundreds of applicants and you're the only person. I read it and it just like, it really stuck out to me. So that was the one thing. Another thing is I chased down like Sophie's saying, it's like, I chased down the HR manager and I like found her freaking direct email and like found her on LinkedIn. I like posted my resume to her and I posted my resume like on her, like emailed her directly, not these job sites, not anything else. I just went directly to these people. So yeah, not the shotgunning I think is less effective than like this direct approach thing. So yeah. Hopefully it doesn't get overused, but I think it's helpful.
Submit an application and then reach out in person. It's just, it helps so much.
Yeah, and I'll just add to this. I think that that's exactly right. Building good relationships and maintaining them, both with the people at the organizations that you want to work for, but also people in your own networks, cultivating them, building a stronger network. LinkedIn's a great tool for that, but of course there's other tools available, and just the communities that you're a part of, including ESW, are a great source of potential connections. I'm in the same place where probably 50% or more of the jobs that I have held came through referrals or recommendations from people who were in my networks. I never went through an actual formal application process. It was all about knowing the right people and having good relationships with them. And in terms of building your skill sets, we heard a lot about that as well. Even if you're not employed or you do find there's a lag, you use that time to your advantage. I will just put in the plug also that building your soft skills are also really important. So learning how to communicate well, both written and spoken, learning emotional intelligence and how to be empathetic with your coworkers, those things can go a long way as well. And I work with a lot of people who have very strong technical skills that are very bad communicators, and that makes their job more difficult. So those are our advice for today. Thank you to all of the panelists for being here. Thanks to the audience. I hope that this is informative. If you didn't get a chance to ask everything that you wanted to ask, our information is on the ESWCon website. You can reach out to us there, or feel free to contact the organizers, and they'll put you in touch with us. So have a great time, everybody. We've got more programming coming up right now, and we will see you in the future.